Paranormal Punches is part of the Podbelly Network. Go to podbelly.com for more great podcasts.
Hey, y'all. This is Frank the Bigfoot, and you're listening to the Paranormal Punchers.
Hey, friends. Welcome to another episode of Paranormal Punchers. I'm Mark.
I'm Alicia.
I'm Nash.
I'm Dave.
And on this episode, we're going to revisit the topic that started this podcast, the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Dun-dun.
Dun-dun. 4 years ago. Not to the day, but close.
It's very close.
We launched the podcast. Dave and I talked about the Dyatlov Pass for like 30 minutes, maybe a little less. We breezed right through that topic. Lish wasn't even kind of part of the show. She was like the announcer. Like she introduced Dave and us. And then we realized quickly that, oh my God, we need Lish on here because we suck at research. She doesn't.
Yep.
Actually, it's almost, if I'm just doing the rough math, if it's 4 years, if we're on episode 104, 105, something like that?
106.
When it comes to bi-weekly episodes, there's 26 bi-weeklies in a year. That's 104 is exactly 4 years. So almost exactly 4 years and a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And now you know. Well, thanks for that math lesson.
Yeah.
And Nash, we had not yet met you yet. You know, that one fateful day at the bar when you came on episode 10. So this is the first time you get to talk about the Dyatlov Pass with us. And it's just one of those topics, lots of conspiracy theories, lots of unknowns, lots of mystery, that it's just, you could talk about it for hours and hours. So I thought, hey, guys, let's get back together on this topic and see if we can do a little bit better job than we did on the first episode. So we should jump into it. We have listener feedback for the second half, some other fun stuff for you. So without further ado, Russia, let's go.
On January 25th, 1959... a group of experienced trekkers and athlete students set out on a journey into the Ural Mountains of Russia. Their frozen bodies, along with unaccountable injuries, were discovered in locations that compounded the puzzle of how they died. The Dyatlov Pass mystery has spawned dozens, if not more than dozens, of conspiracy theories, which have endured for over 60 years. So,
those dozens.
Dozens upon dozens. Yes. Like
Baker's
75
dozens.
to be exact.
Now, they were found, the name of the mountain, I'm going to butcher it. I don't know, Dave, if you want to give it a shot, but it's Kholat, Kholat, Chakhl, Kholat Chakhl.
Yeah.
But the Mansi tribe that's out there, they have another name for it, and it's roughly translated to mean Dead Mountain.
Dead Mountain.
Or a mountain of the dead.
Now, the Mansi people, They were around in 1873? Now, was it the Mansi people that named it that? Because from what I was thinking, that the Mansi people spawned two different other tribes, the Bashiks and the Turkics. That's what's out there now, and they're all descendants of the Mansi people. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess the mountain, the Mansi called it Kholat Chakhl, which translated means dead mountain. Yeah, you're right, Nash.
That must have been carried down from way back then. Nice.
Yeah, I didn't even realize, maybe we brought it up in the first episode. I didn't go back to listen if we did, but the name Dyatlov Pass is named after the leader of the group.
Yeah, Igor.
And that's not the name of the geographic area.
Now, I can't remember if we mentioned it. Knowing us, we didn't mention it.
Right. Yeah.
I thought for sure you knew that.
No, I mean, if I did, I relearned it just doing research for this episode.
Awesome. Yes, now it's referred to as the Dyatlov Pass incident because Igor Dyatlov, he was leading this hike, this ski hike trip into the mountains. So it just became known as Dyatlov Pass.
Yeah. So there was it was a group of 10 originally. And I think they were trying to get their grade 3 hiking certification by doing this whole trip, especially at the time of the year that they were doing this and the location. They were trying to up their certs. Now, the one guy, I don't think I wrote down his name. The one guy that Yuri Yudin? No, Yuri Yudin. He had to turn back because he had joint pain or sciatica. I think
sciatica is what I saw.
Yeah. But the rest of the group, they continued on, and he's the only one that survived.
He actually passed away in 2012 or 2013.
He did. Yeah. Now, they were supposed to send a telegraph at the nearest village on their way back. I think that by February 12th, they were supposed to send this this message out to all their families saying, hey, we're back. But they didn't. I know that their families, they were not concerned at first because I guess they've had issues in the past with bad weather. So they were like, oh, we'll just give them a few days. So by February 20th, their families were like, okay, something's wrong. And it is at that point that they raised the alarm at the university and they put out a search party for them. Now, what was found? There's a lot of questions, really. The search party that they had, they found some ski tracks, and so they were following those to the edge of the forest. And then at that point, that's when they started climbing up the mountain. They found the tent about 500 meters up. It was partially covered in snow, and I believe one of the reason they found it is because one of the tent poles, I think, was sticking up a little bit. They also found a flashlight resting on top of it. And it was on top. Yeah, it was on top of the tent, and it was on top of how much? 10 centimeters of snow. So definitely a couple inches for sure of snow. So it was set up there after the fact. I don't know, but inside they found a blanket and some backpacks lined up neatly, and a pile of boots in one corner. There was also a route map, official papers, money, and a flask of alcohol. They also spotted a plate full of salo, which is white pork fat. And I have this in quotes. It was sliced up as if they were getting ready to have supper or something, and they didn't have time. What was interesting was that the tent was found to be cut from the inside. The side, even the front doors were still latched and everything. So it's they didn't even go out the front. They were like, oh my gosh, we have to get out of here real quick. So I know a lot of the questions that I found were what was inside the tent that they had to get out as quickly as they did.
Now, there was 8 men, 2 women. They were all in their early 20s, all students. But the trail that they were taking on their ski hike thingy was labeled as a category 3. So that you had to be really fit to do this. So they were all at prime of their life, healthy. I just want to add that because it adds to the mystery.
Right. They kind of knew what they were doing. So...
Yeah, it seems like. What did you by chance see what the categories were? I mean, if it goes from 1 to 5 or 1 to 4 by chance?
No, but the category 3, at least what I was reading, that requires a high level of fitness. So that's one of the. It's hard.
Yeah, grade 3.
Wicked hard.
Grade 3 was like the highest you could receive at that time. So like they were going for like the best. So
well, and it sounds like it. It sounds like everybody there was familiar with hiking with each other. Super experienced. They knew what they were doing. To have 9 20-somethings on a hike by themselves, and to find one flask of alcohol means that they were pretty serious hikers.
Right.
They knew that if you got trashed up on the mountain, you're not going to be able to continue to hike.
Right.
Which is not what we would do if we went hiking. It's mostly like forget the tent, strap the keg to the back,
right?
Keep going. But to know that there was, it sounded like they really did know what they were doing and had experience with each other and how to work together, and that's kind of adds to the whole mystery of the whole thing,
Yeah.
Right. The one guy, the one Yuri, forget his last name. It starts with a D. I'll probably butcher it, but he was a big guy, fit. There was a story about him chasing off a bear on one of his camping trips. He was just a big, burly dude. So,
well, they're sterner stuff back in the day. So, a big burly dude. It sounds like he's chasing off a bear. Yeah, he sounds like something I would never do.
So, just outside the tent, there were frozen footprints made by 8 or 9 people. Some were wearing socks. There was one boot, and then the rest were barefoot. The tracks continued downhill for 5 to 10 meters, and then they disappeared, which was a question for me because I was like, I guess the weather, it could have, blown snow over their tracks or whatever, but it also made me go, oh boy, what can we dig in here? So they found the remains of a small fire under a tree with branches that were broken about 5 meters up it. The first body, who was Doroshenko, was that the one, Yuri Doroshenko? I think. They found him by the tree. He had burns on his head and his foot, minor cuts and bruises, dried blood on his face, and there was a gray foam on his cheeks, which implied to them a pulmonary edema. A body nearby was Krivonishenko.
Yeah,
I'm just butchering
Yuri.
these names. Yeah. He had similar cuts and bruises, but he was also missing the tip of his nose. And then a chunk of his knuckle was also missing, and they later found it in his mouth. So he chewed it off.
He bit the back of his hand so hard.
Yeah.
Now, the cedar tree that they found them by, like 15 meters up, branches were ripped off.
Yeah.
So almost, the investigation they were looking at, like, were they trying to climb up this tree to get away from something?
Yeah.
Well, 15 meters. It's 15 meters up?
Yeah, meters. So what is 1 meter is 3 feet, right? So
yeah, that's like 50 feet.
Yeah,
45, 50
it was
feet.
up pretty high. They were trying to get something.
They're trying to shimmy up there. For that, were they all trying to get up the same tree?
I don't know. Yeah.
Or is it just that one dude?
Those 2 dudes were found by the cedar tree.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Because that's a hell of a climb when you're not wearing shoes. That's a hell of a climb if you are wearing shoes.
The next body that was found was Igor Dyatlov. He was found by the tent, or like he was going back to the tent, I believe. He was dressed, but he was shoeless. And he had minor cuts and bruises, was missing a tooth. He had blood on his lips. Kolmogorova was found face down, closest to the tent. She had minor cuts and bruises and a large blunt force bruise on the right side of her torso, looking something like she was hit by a stick or a baton. On March 5th, so that was all they found at that point. On March 5th, Rustam, and I don't know what his last name is, Rustam was found with a fractured skull. His body was better dressed than the others. He had a long-sleeved undershirt, a sweater, 2 pairs of pants, 4 pairs of socks, and 1 boot.
He was wearing all that?
Yes. I do want to mention that the two that they found originally, they were stripped just to their underwear. So I don't know if he was, like, if they passed away first and he was trying to grab their clothes to stay as warm as he could. I don't know. That was a thought.
And for Nash and Dave, just a correction, 15 feet, not 15 meters.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
But 15 feet, you could, they were trying to climb up to get away from something.
They were getting away from something.
So that makes sense with the clothes, what you were saying there, Lish, because if you were like the last one surviving, that's the first thing you would do on a freezing cold blizzard mountain. It's like, all we have here is clothes, bundle up and try to get out. That makes sense.
Yeah. Now, the last four, they weren't found until May, and it's once the snow started melting and everything. Kolevatov, their names, I'm so sorry. Was found to have died of hypothermia, but he had a broken nose and was missing his eyes and the soft tissue that was around them.
Yeah, so this was May 4th, about 2 months after they found the first several bodies.
Yeah.
So they probably were buried between 13 foot of snow in this ravine, a little bit further away from that cedar tree and stuff.
Now, I believe he was embraced with one of the other members, most likely trying to preserve their body heat or whatever.
Right.
But he died from a crushed chest, and he also had a pen and paper in his hand, but there was nothing like written on the paper, so he must have found paper and pen and was gonna write something. I don't know. Yeah, he was going to tell us what happened. I don't know. I'm not going to say his names anymore. I'm sorry. Another one was nearby, died from an impact to his skull. And then the last girl, she died of a crushing injury to her chest, and her eyes and tongues were missing, as well as like the soft tissue around your eyes. Her tongue was missing, and she had blood in her stomach. So,
did it say anything about anybody being disemboweled?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I didn't see anything on that.
Okay, yeah, it was just something that I have a theory, but that was one of the questions that had to do with my theory.
Yeah. A criminal case was opened at the end of February, like looking into this, but then was closed like 3 months later. And they concluded it was a spontaneous power of nature that happened to them. So the official explanation was they died from hypothermia. Now, because a lot of these bodies were found with strange injuries, a lot of people rejected this. And they turned their attentions to all of these theories. So I don't know if you guys want to start going into some of the theories that you found. Go ahead.
You guys go ahead.
Yeah. Boys, go.
Everybody, don't go once. All right, let's just back up to the tent. All right.
Yeah.
And let's see. The tent, and one of the theories is avalanche. Now, the area itself wasn't really known for like avalanches, but also the tent wasn't buried like an avalanche came down. So the tent had the cut marks. Looks like, and they cut them from the inside. One little theory about that is that Dyatlov and another dude had like this camping stove they made.
Okay.
And they were taking that with them, setting it up. So one theory is maybe they cut the holes because it started smoking up. And they were cutting, relief holes or whatnot. Or maybe something caught on fire, and when they put it out, all the smoke, and they were cutting the holes to relieve it. Which, that sort of makes sense. I don't know why they wouldn't just open the flaps and let the smoke out. And if there was an avalanche, it would be quicker, you think, to go out the front door, the flaps, rather than cut your way out.
Yeah.
Well, and there was a second set of cuts. So there was the main cuts as though to exit from, but there was a set of cuts that were like peepholes to stare out.
Oh.
And so that was a lot of what I was researching was around the inquiry that was reopened and reading that explanation and everything. And so that was part of it, that they made these cuts to see what was possibly coming down the mountain.
Oh, geez.
And then when they realized what it was, they cut the rest of it to get out as quickly as possible.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Now, what was it? Or what do you think maybe it was?
Well, I mean, again, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but so there was an official inquiry opened in 2017, 18, to look at this again, and they ruled that it was an avalanche, and that everything is consistent with an avalanche, even if the avalanche may have been a non-likely occurrence in that area.
Right.
And I mean, there's a lot more I can go into on what happens in an avalanche and hypothermia and things like that, and why it can explain some of the things in the bodies, but yet it doesn't satisfy my need for explanation.
It sounds like a cover-up to me.
Yeah.
The bodies that were found in the ravine, the trauma they had to their bodies, one investigator described it as like the trauma you would suffer from a car crash.
Yeah. I mean, I know when snow's coming down in an avalanche, like, I feel like it's very powerful. It can definitely do a lot of damage. So I don't know if that could be a reasoning behind all of those.
Well, but if it was an avalanche, the tent didn't move, right?
Yeah.
Right.
No, it didn't.
Well, the possibility is that they knew there was they could hear an avalanche starting. They peeked out. They saw that something was coming down the mountain. They cut their way out and started running, and that the avalanche didn't actually hit the tent. That, if they had stayed in the tent, they may have been okay, but that the group dispersed and the avalanche got some of them, not all of them.
Right.
But I don't think that this ravine, where the people that had the trauma was like in the path that an avalanche would just carry them down and in. So it doesn't really, like, it fits a nice explanation if you don't actually look into it.
Well, let's look at some of their injuries. A lot of them had busted up knuckles, the kind of thing that would happen if you were in a fight.
Right.
The one girl had her tongue ripped out; it was gone.
Yeah.
Now you could say, oh, well, maybe some animals came along, were picking at it, but the areas around the face don't suggest that an animal was picking at it and got the tongue and was satisfied and took off.
I have a theory on that.
Great, can't wait to hear it. Wasn't the one eyes missing?
Yeah, there was two people who were missing eyes.
Now the eyes missing, that one. So part of the research, they have the footage of the bodies as they were found, and those two were found where they were still embedded in the snow except for their head. Around the head, everything had melted, so the decomp on the head was far advanced from the rest of the body, and the eyes would explain it. Doesn't explain the tongue, but it does explain the eyes.
Okay.
Yeah.
My theory does.
Okay, eyes. Tell me about it, Nash.
So, okay, well, this actually fits in later when we get into the theories down the road. But I did a little research on, oddly enough, the tribal rituals around the local area. Okay, and so I also did a little research on tribal, the behaviors of, because I'm from out west, of the Apache Indians. Okay, there's a book. It's by Redmane, something like that. And what they go into is they say, so the relationship between the men and women in tribal and different tribes, the men would go out and kill and do the scalping if it's like another human. But the ones that you have to watch out for are, so the man in these tribes would bring home the food. The women would clean up the food. Okay, and make it palatable and cook it, the whole 9 yards. So the ladies, now this is true of the Apache tribe. The ladies in the Apache tribe were serious experts at digging into soft tissue, cutting them out for cooking, cleaning and cooking. And it was widely known in the Apache tribe in the Southwest that this was the case, that the men would kill buffaloes, animals, whatever, bring them home, and the ladies would clean them up. And if there was ever a tribal battle, that after the people who had fallen, the ladies would come through after the fact to the dead corpses and pull out their eyes, their nose, and cut them out, and their tongues and their fingers, and strip them and take their boots and basically salvage anything that they could from the dead bodies to take home and reuse.
So you're saying the Mansi took the eyeballs?
Yeah.
Now,
took the eyeballs, took the tongue, took whatever they could use.
Okay. Now, that is one of the theories that a group of Mansi had killed him.
Yeah.
But the Mansi tribe helped with the search. They, one thing about the Dead Mountain, it's not meant to be like supernatural. It's because nothing really grows there and no deer. So they don't even go around the mountain at certain time because there's nothing up there.
I don't think it's the Mansi that killed them. I think something else killed them, and I have a theory on that. I just think that it's the Mansi ladies who did the salvaging and pulled what they could from the dead bodies.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And there was one other theory that I found a mention of it, that somebody was theorizing about a tribe of Mansi warriors or hunters jacked up on mushrooms.
That could be. I mean, that's kind of groovy, but I know. Okay.
Well, no, it was not groovy at all. They're jacked up on mushrooms and then raid your tent and murder you. So that's it's nothing groovy. That's a bad trip, bro.
Right.
That's true. That's true. I'm going to agree with you on that one.
But I feel like some stuff I was reading was just debunked, that the Mansi had nothing to do with it.
Right. Well, I know that the tribe, a lot of the members, they were arrested and they were questioned and interrogated, but nothing ever came of it. So,
but Nash, what you said is intriguing because we'll get there of the military KGB cover up. So with the military cover up, maybe they would do things that would suggest,
correct.
Oh, look at this. This means this is what the Mansi are known for. So I've got a bunch of theories that all kind of intertwine, but that's kind of a source of one of them is military cover-up, because there are bases there. There's a nuclear base up in the Yamantau Mountains, which is in this area. Yeah, and do we cover their injuries enough? Do we get it all down? I don't think we talked enough about their injuries, because that's where it gets a little questionable. And one of the biggest things that was discovered, radiation was discovered on some of their clothing.
You're going my direction. Here we go.
Now, okay, Nash, you seem so excited. Go.
I'm just excited because I don't want to deliver it all up front, but it's like I've got it's like a theory based on the military that's in the local area. So that base is a nuclear base. Okay, it houses 2 to 3 garrisons up in the area, and due to the base itself housing some kind of nuclear power, there could be radiation in the area. Okay, so I see the radiation coming out, and the military wanting to cover up the bodies based on that, because they could find out that this whole thing stemmed from a radiation link from the military. So I agree with that. That bookends my whole theory. Okay. It gets a little crazy on the middle of it, but that bookends it.
Yeah, we're talking about the head, bruises and abrasions. The one person had part of his hand chewed off. They found that piece in his mouth. You mentioned the gray foam coming out of the one. then what I read suggested a great force on his chest.
Oh.
The one had the Uri D. I didn't spell it out because, but his underwear was ripped. He had liver mortis spots on the back of his neck, which was not consistent with how they found his body, which could mean his body was moved. All right. And hair on the right side of his head was burned.
Oh, gosh.
He had blood on his lips and nose, 10 various bruises and abrasions on his body, and, of course, the gray foam that you mentioned. So, this suggests that his body was moved. That already can lead into, like, okay, the shenanigans are afoot. Let's see, Yuri K. That's the guy who chewed off the back of his hand. Igor, bruises and abrasions on his face and ankles and knees. Again, determined hypothermia. Let's see, the one girl had bruises and abrasions on her face and a 29-centimeter bright red bruise on her lumbar region. Cause of death, hypothermia. Again, the Rustin, that dude had a fracture in the front part of his skull. Cause of death, hypothermia. The Alex Z I wrote down here. Eyeballs missing, open wound on skull, ribs broken, listed as fatal injuries. Again, Nikolai, multiple skull fractures. The other guy, skull exposed and a deformed neck. Like maybe it was like broken and in an odd position. And of course, the woman with the missing tongue, broken ribs, massive hemorrhage in her heart.
Oh, jeez.
And blood in her stomach. And then again, talking about the way their knuckles were. Were they fighting for their life? Who were they fighting with?
Right.
They tried to climb that tree to get away, and then of course, radiation.
Right.
On their clothing.
Right.
I do have a question about the area first. So, I'm thinking about the whole avalanche thing now, and they're climbing up these trees. Is this area is it an open, like, it's not a valley because it's on the side of a mountain, but is it an open non-treed area, or are they in a heavily treed area?
I think where they camped was out in the open. And then there was a tree line that they were heading down towards.
Okay, because that's where I was kind of confused, was like, because it seems if they're in an avalanche, and I could see them freaking out about, we're not surrounded by trees, book it to the tree line and get up a tree. That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if they're getting away from a Yeti.
Right. Well, not yet.
Yep.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that I still haven't been able to really understand what they were saying. But in the original investigation, they actually blamed it on Dyatlov. That as the leader, he led them 500 meters off trail.
Oh. That
they were not supposed to be up where they were. They were supposed to be down at that tree line.
Oh.
So 500 meters, it's half a kilometer, 3 city blocks.
Right.
That's not far, but they were still where they weren't supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that they originally they said that he was disoriented and lack of leadership led them to the wrong place, and that's what contributed to their death.
Okay.
So I don't know if maybe that was intentional, that, we could do this and there'd be a better experience or whatever. And then when something was happening, they're like, let's get back to where we're supposed to be.
Right.
Or what? But yeah.
Well, that was one of the theories too, that maybe they wandered into the wrong place. Like they wandered into an experiment, or there might have been, some military shenanigans going on in that area. So they ran into the wrong place at the wrong time. But
one of the things that I saw that I think it was the families had pushed on was that the military was actually doing missile exercises and may have caused an avalanche through their use of ordnance that they weren't supposed to be doing.
Okay.
And so maybe it was an avalanche that killed them, but it wasn't an avalanche that was naturally occurring. This was a...
Yeah, well, they, looks like, I have a note here, R7 intercontinental missile launches.
Okay.
Yeah, I found another theory that I found kind of interesting about that, that because they were doing that, they caused a herd of deer to panic and start racing towards the tent. And because the the students were very confused, they were scared, they ran out, not wearing shoes, not wearing coats, all that kind of stuff. And so that's why they died from hypothermia, but they had all those wounds from the herd of deer that ran into their tent. And I was like, okay, interesting.
I think there would be...
But the tent wasn't destroyed by deer.
Right.
It wasn't like...
I know. I thought that was kind of interesting. Or maybe they ran out because the deer were coming. I don't know. But
yeah, that seems really odd because, I mean, did they notate any kind of like deer tracks? Because
no.
I thought that they only talked about footprints from the people and maybe something else.
Right. And, this is one of those things that you talk about, like with an avalanche or anything, this area isn't easily traversed. Obviously, it's a category 3, and they didn't find them for 3 weeks, 4 weeks after they perished. So why would we believe anything of what they say they found in footprints? Because it's contaminated at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they
maybe,
found...
I mean, if it's so remote and nobody's there, the footprints, whatever they were, would be preserved. I mean, they might be melted a little bit because of the snow, but wouldn't you think in that time frame there would be more snow falling, the winds coming off the mountains? Because that's another of the theories, is that the winds caused everything, not avalanches. If the winds were powerful enough to be like that, well, then that would be blowing the snow around. You get drifting and everything. That's kind of why I was asking about the topographical areas, because it's like if it's an open area, you're subject to wind and sun, and if you're in a tree line, then you know what I mean. Nothing is really consistent on any of this.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing, Dave, I know when we first talked about this long ago, 4 years ago, infrasound was one thing you were extremely intrigued about.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that's also one of the possibilities or theories that the infrasound drove them crazy, that they started, stripping and running out in the cold.
Right.
And, of course, died of hypothermia.
Yep. Yeah, so if you're not aware of it, the infrasound is that there's a tone at, I forget what, I think it's 10 hertz, something like that, 100 hertz, that you can barely recognize, but your body knows that it's there, and it causes dread and fear. And it's actually industrial machinery causes this, such that they often attribute that if you're in an asylum or a old warehouse or anything, the reason you feel scared is because of the machinery causing this sound that will cause this, feeling that you don't even know it's there type of thing. And that
kind of like the brown note when it hits you. It's too late.
I was just going to say.
And that, with them, that there was something going on that caused this infrasound, and that, they were in their tent and it drove them crazy. They were either paranoid or even just turning on each other, and that's what
could lead to the fighting. It could be why some of the marks on their fists and stuff.
Yep.
Now, and that jumped into my head because Nash was asking about the terrain and how these winds are. Now, with the right terrain, Dave, could the wind funnel down, and can that naturally, the infrasound naturally occur based on terrain and weather?
So I don't know about the infrasound being caused by that, but the wind definitely is being called out as a possibility of this. Katabatic wind.
Yeah.
And it actually, it means descending wind, and that can reach hurricane force strength in a small targeted area coming down the mountain. So like, even if they weren't hit with an avalanche, if they had been experiencing this, it would have, they would have had blunt force trauma and, things like that, and been pushed down the mountain and trying to get away from it. Now, whether that wind could also have been going and in the background causing this low hum that they were perceiving but didn't know about, and it was driving them crazy, who knows?
Now, to kind of get away from the infrasound, because I think I take that as one piece of the puzzle, along with radiation being a piece of the puzzle. But weren't there other tracks around the tent also, besides human-made like footprints?
I didn't see anything about that.
Me neither.
Me neither.
Okay. So it's just
now maybe I was the only one to go back and re-listen to episode 1 here, people. But we said in episode 1 that there were some larger footprints around.
Hey, man, episode 1, and anybody that is still listening to us, thank you, because I re-listened to episode 1, and it was a bit rough. We didn't even know what our voice was with the podcast. I kept saying, "Oh, look it up on Wikipedia." I said Wikipedia 3 times, and kept saying shit. So I feel like Dave and I thought we were prepared, and then weren't. So if we said something about larger tracks around the tent, in my second time doing this topic, I did not find that.
It said that one of the theories was the Yeti.
Yeah.
Yes. Then that's where we're going, Nash.
That the Yeti came, and then So I have a tangent thing to work in with the Yeti.
Good. Then we'll start there, because there's a lot. I mean, I even have something to throw out there about the U.S. Secret Service and the KGBs. But let's start with the Yeti. That seems the simplest thing to start with. So they recovered a camera and developed the roll. So there's the frame number 17. It shows this snowy covered trail, lots of snow, and this shape of something kind of with its one hand on tree, kind of like it's looking out on the trail at him. Now, again, it's a little blurry, and people theorize it's a Yeti. But cryptozoologists have checked it out and like, nah, definitely not. Just look at the proportions of this or that.
Right.
But frame number 17 is, I think, helps propel the concept of the Yeti. And also, when on their train ride up to where they're going to start this hike, they were clowning around and made like this little newspapery thing. And they had like a line about the Yeti. So people believe that maybe the Yeti's responsible.
Yeah. Well, the Mansi people also have like legends about this creature up there. So it definitely fueled a lot of people thinking, oh boy.
So Nash, your tangent.
Okay, so all right. This is definitely not off the rails. It's definitely a solid based theory. Okay. All right. So this is what I'm thinking. Okay. These campers went up on this hill. Unbeknownst to them, there was radiation on this mountain. Okay. The mountain itself is a sacred place by the Mansi people. Okay. So it's already this hallowed ground, and there's radiation happening up on there. These hikers get up on there. They get a little disoriented, maybe experience a little bit of effects from the radiation. So they're starting to feel a little sick, a little crazy. Things are getting a little sideways. We touched on something in another episode a ways back, which I'm interjecting into this one, which is the Wendigo spirit.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is, I dislike the phrase "the perfect storm," but I'm going to use it because you had a situation on a sacred, holy place where there was radiation, and you had these kids who were starting to go a little crazy. Okay. So maybe not a full-fledged turned into a Wendigo, but maybe 1 or 2 or 3, or the group that ended off in the ravine that were basically stripped down to their clothes, they started to change. They started to go crazy and started to get like possessed by the spirit. Okay. That would, to me, explain, we got to get out of this tent right now because this dude's freaking out. He's going to start biting people and going after people. These couple of guys shimmy up this tree to get away. Okay. The cedar tree. It explains all the blunt force trauma. It explains basically all the damage that could have been done individually to each individual person. It explains kind of what happened to him. And then because it was so cold, he ended up dying up on the mountain. The person who basically got away was the guy who dressed up completely in 18 different sets of clothing to run down the mountain, but he died anyway. So I was thinking that this was potentially all these factors accelerated this craziness that happened, kind of akin to the whole Wendigo spirit, where these kids started to turn on each other, attack one another, and almost like cannibal style started to go after to eat and kill one another. So that kind of led me to the spot where it was like this Wendigo thing happened. And if the Yeti was there, now, if he was there to say, like, you know, hold on, back up, put the brakes on, you know, but if he wasn't there and everybody died. So if the Yeti was there or not is a whole different thing. But I think it was more of a Wendigo spirit than it was anything else.
Now, there's never been interesting, but there's never been any talk about Wendigo, a Russian Wendigo. I mean, that's like that's Native American legend and lore. Yeah. So and interesting tribe, for sure.
You know, the Mansi tribe is who was there. We don't know their lore. There might be something up there, and it was on a sacred mountain that nobody ever goes up on there. So
their legend is the Yeti. So.
Yeah. So I was just thinking it could be, like I said, it could be a couple of different factors that contributed to this. You know, the kids were trespassing on this sacred ground. There was radiation. The Indians knew about it. I can't say Indians. The local tribes knew about it.
Now, does anybody have any notes disputing that this was sacred to the Mansi?
I did find that it was sacred land, but I found it like in one place, really. So
I swear I came across something that the mountain's not sacred to them.
Right.
You know, it's just nothing grows up there, and certain times they don't hunt. So it's, but I could be wrong. That's why I want to know if anybody found like anything saying that it definitely was sacred ground.
The only thing that kind of led me to really galvanizing that it was sacred to them was actually I was doing a little homework on Mount Everest. And how to the local Sherpas, that the mountain tops and the mountain themselves are their gods. They're sacred mountains. So I kind of translated one to the other, saying if there's a local tribe in that area, I can very easily imagine them seeing the mountain and the mountaintop as a sacred place.
Fun fact for you. There was a brief moment in time in my 30s, maybe my mid-30s, that I wanted to go and climb Mount Everest. I was researching the cost, what it'll take, and fortunately I didn't do it because, I mean, after looking up the Dyatlov Pass and stuff like that, I'm like, no, I don't want to hike on a mountain, be stuck on a mountain for like 30 days. And,
yeah, no.
Yeah, but for a brief moment in time, I wanted to conquer Mount Everest.
Yeah, and I just see this mountaintop as a similar thing to Everest and the Sherpas there and the Tibetans there. That it's so sacred that I could see it as being like a forbidden thing for people to go on it. So that with radiation, a little bit of craziness, a little hoodoo, you do.
Okay. And you could be right about the sacred. There's this, I don't know if you guys came across this, but the number 9. So hundreds of years ago, 100 years before the Dyatlov Pass incident, 9 Mansi hunters died in around the same area. And in 1991, a plane crashed in the same area, killing all 9 people on board. And how many people were in the Dyatlov Pass group?
9.
So, and I did read that the Mansi feels like it's definitely bad luck to go out there if you have 9 people.
Okay.
So Yuri Yudin, when they were at a solid 10, I don't know.
Yeah.
And just one more thought on the whole sacred concept. I mean, they call this the death mountain. Typically you don't, when I think of sacred, I think of something you worship or revere. This sounds like something they fear. I don't, I don't know that this would be
or they
sacred to them. This is hey, you just don't go there.
Right.
Not because it's off limits, because it's sacred. It's because you're going to die.
Well, yes, but look at everything we know about Native American burial grounds. They're sacred spaces.
But you don't go there to die. You go there after you die. That's
where they put their dead. It's
the preserving of the body and the soul versus, hey, if you go there, something bad's going to happen to you.
Look at that family in Poltergeist. I mean, Craig T. Nelson really had it hard. They bought that house and it was on a family he didn't know.
Right.
Yeah, they got crap coming out of the pool. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys see anything about the bright light in the sky?
Yes, thank you. I was about to bring that up.
I didn't.
Okay.
Well, I told you guys about the photos that they developed. Of course, frame number 17, people think it's a Yeti. The 33rd photo in Yuri Krivoshenko's camera roll of these, looks like possible orange lights moving fast. Which leads us to orange lights in the sky, aliens.
Yep.
See, that's a different component. I didn't really look at the alien component, but if you gave me a couple minutes, I can.
Well, all right. So about 50 miles away, around the same time, there was a group of campers, and they saw orange spheres in the sky.
The Mansi village elders, they also saw a burning object, and they said it was like a bad omen the same night. So there's a lot of people that think it could be aliens or it could be the government they were doing missiles or they were doing some experiments. So that was the lights. I don't know.
Well, why don't we take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about these orange spheres in the sky and more. We'll be right back. Nash, what is the one thing that could go wrong on a paranormal investigation?
Why, Mark? That's the lack of food.
People are putting in their backpack a EMF detector, a flashlight, a digital recorder, but if you forget that snack, your whole evening could be ruined.
That's exactly right.
So if you head over to mfjerky.com, you can order some delicious beef jerky, and if you use our code SpookyJerky15, you can save 15% on your order, and it's a big savings. That way, when you're out doing an investigation, you're not going to worry about hunger pains. Your stomach's not going to growl and mess up a possible EVP.
Right.
And like we like to say here, Moses Family Jerky, the best thing to pack on your paranormal or normal adventure. And we're back. All right. Orange balls in the sky.
Balls in the sky. Lots of balls.
As I said, campers about 50 miles away saw this also. Now, the chief investigator of the Dyatlov Pass incident, Lev Ivanov. I'm sorry, I probably mispronounced that. In quotes, I suspected at the time, and am almost sure now, that these bright flying spheres had a direct connection to the group's death. He said that when he was interviewed by a small newspaper in 1990. And my note here from allthatisinteresting.com, censorship and secrecy in the USSR forced him to abandon this line of inquiry.
Yeah. Yeah, he was ordered to classify his findings and forget about it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, and there was other reports of tops of trees that were burnt. That the search party were seeing that this, and I think that was suppressed also.
Yeah.
So maybe these bright orange balls in the sky, they were cutting peepholes to look at it. This thing started maybe shooting beams down. They freaked out.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the radiation came from that. Tops of trees being burnt could be from that.
Yeah. Well, even if they were testing missiles, if a nuclear missile was launched as a test and exploded early and you're seeing the orange fireballs come down, and they light trees on fire. And of course, you would have heard a loud noise. And I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when he was looking into it, I guess he asked the forensic experts about like their different wounds and things like that had happened to them, and they said something like an explosion wave is what hit them.
So it was like concussive.
Yeah, like so it was. He was also pressured to
take that back.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, don't put that in your report. Thanks.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
what was the type of rocket again that you had, Alicia, down the type of rocket that they were using? It was
ICBM.
An R-7 intercontinental missile.
Okay. So I guess they could have been testing it, ICBMs too, but that's only in the morning. But
Wow.
Just saying. I mean, it's midday. Why would you be doing that? But what I'm thinking is that's exactly right. Maybe they were seeing the liftoff or the coming down of these rockets, and a little radiation, got a little crazy, the booms, the whole 9 yards. You know, at that time, your imagination would go bonkers with seeing these rockets coming down. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you know, for them to be in such different states of undress. And now some of the party members they found them had clothes from the other people that were dead.
Yeah.
Was that person dead? Then he grabbed a coat. What the heck happened to these hikers? It's sad that it's going to be an extreme mystery. Probably forever.
It will be, yeah.
Now, here's one I found, Nash and Dave. I don't know if you came across this, but this one's interesting. And I don't have a lot of information, but I just want to still chuck it out there. So, U.S. and KGB. So, some of a few of the party members were actually secret agents. And they were going out on this hike where they were going to meet up with the Americans and give them something. And of course,
microfilm. They were passing microfilm.
And of course, the Soviets, figured it out, busted in on it, and this happened. I feel that it's actually a writer, Alexei Rakitin, I think he's working on a book called Death on the Trail. That'll have a lot more about that, but I came across this little blurb and like, wow, that is definitely interesting. I've never heard this one, or at least because I didn't do great research on the first episode we ever did, so I never came across this.
So it was a secret rendezvous of secret agents.
Yeah, the one I saw, there was a Western agent named the Mole. And he wanted them to photograph a secret missile test. And after doing that, then they got caught, was murdered. And then I guess the cleanup crew moved their tent to like a place that shouldn't have been.
And I had it backwards. Things went wrong. Soviet military didn't come in and kill the Americans. Something went wrong. And the U.S. spies ended up killing the Soviet agents that were on the Dyatlov team.
Okay.
Still just as confusing if it was the other way around. Right. It makes me want to go look up this book, Death on the Trail.
Right.
Yeah, but that doesn't explain a lot of the other items that. I mean, I guess you could do them in a way to create some kind of a subterfuge to mislead. I mean, what about the cuts? What about the guys in the trees? What about the naked kids hugging down on the ravine? And you know what I mean? It doesn't explain all of that unless you're trying to mislead somebody.
Yeah.
Right. Now, so do you want to correct something there?
There you go. If you're trying to mislead somebody. That's why a lot of people feel it's a cover-up. They stumbled in to a military experiment. And the military killed them, and this is the cover-up. And look at the mystery that has been left behind.
Yeah. So from everything I've read, everybody in the ravine was fully clothed,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the ones that had the blunt force trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That the people found outside of the ravine were the ones that were in some state of undress, as well as died from hypothermia.
Yeah. They also had the cuts and bruises and things like that. So
yes. Yep. More superficial wounds.
Yeah.
Type of thing. Yep. And so one of the things that I keep going back to is that those people who they say died from hypothermia did die of hypothermia. And one of the things with hypothermia that I came across, so if you're in extreme cold like that, your body will pull all blood flow into the core. Okay? And so your hands and feet will lose blood flow, and that's why they'll start to die very quickly.
They turn blue and black.
Right. But you will actually feel a sensation of extreme warmth.
Yep.
All that blood in your head and chest, you're going to feel really warm. And so people start to take off clothes because they think they're getting hot.
Yeah.
And that what they think, with this, basically, once you hit that state, no one has ever survived that state without extreme medical care at that time. Okay. So it sounds like the two that were found down to their underwear were probably, they had made a fire and they were trying to get warm. They started, I'm guessing the guy who bit off part of his hand started to see the black, necrosis forming from, and maybe tried to bite it off or something. He was starting to go crazy and then started to strip. And eventually both of them succumbed to hypothermia. The other guy, who was dressed in so many layers, he was actually found back closest to the tent.
Yeah.
As though he had gathered up everybody else's clothes and was trying to get back to the tent, knowing that there was, more stuff there, but never actually made it.
Yeah.
But what it leads me to believe is that the people who died in the ravine or ended up in the ravine, something happened, whether it was a Yeti, whether it was the government, whether it was an assassin, whether it was an avalanche, that killed them, blunt force trauma. And it scared the others so much that they ran to the tree line and they hid, and they stayed as long as they could until they started succumbing from hypothermia. And then they tried to go back to the tent. But there was something that said they didn't want to go back to that tent.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not
that's
saying
kind of
it's
where I was
aliens.
headed with that. Exactly. That's exactly right. It's like, so we have all these ways that are killing these people, but we don't have the source of the fear that freaked everybody out and made everybody scatter. We have, up on a frozen mountain, there's a bunch of ways to die up there, but to be freaked out and to scatter and to die, end up in a ravine, and these people over here, what made these people scatter and get out of there?
Yeah, I really like how you
was
put
it missiles?
that. Yeah, I like how you put that, Nash. We don't know the source of the fear.
Yeah.
That's the catalyst.
Right.
Why
Yeah, what
they
started
then cut
this?
their tent and also leave in various states of undress. What is the source of the fear? And that's the mystery. We might never know.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And, it's they were going for their highest level certification. Okay. So in terms of, for something to actually make them afraid, part of going to that level of certification isn't just that you're capable. It's that you're experienced enough. You know how to handle that. If this happens, if there's an avalanche, here's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So something had to be so extreme that it went well beyond anything they had ever experienced or were trained to handle.
Basically experts in the field, in their given field, and there was 9 of them, and they were all together, but for some reason they all freaked out.
Right.
I agree. Something had to be so far out of the realm that nobody knew how to deal with it.
Right.
All the reasons for death or for hypothermia or for avalanche, they were all like, it was alarming, but they all knew the process and they all knew what to do on how to survive.
Right.
And from it looks like they tried a variety of different things, but they all did. You know, they didn't pass that. It was a pass-fail, and they all did not pass. So something had to. So it's like if there's an avalanche, or if there's something that would make you leave your source of protection, what would make you do that? What would make an experienced group of hikers do that in such a manner that they would do it in the nude, or you know what I mean, or do it in different sense of Reddit? What instead of throwing on it takes a second to put on your jacket.
Right. Well, so. Yeah, I mean, I do think that they all were clothed when they left the tent.
Yeah.
They just didn't have shoes or socks on in some cases, as though they were still dressed and they were prepping for dinner. But then over time, the hypothermia set in. Some of them started taking off clothes, and others started grabbing those clothes in order to try to stay alive.
Right.
But for that to happen, that can't happen. That doesn't happen in like 10 minutes.
Right.
So leaving the tent and nearly dying of hypothermia and feeling the different situations of hypothermia, that takes a fair amount of time.
Right. Yep.
So
and why didn't they try going back to the tent? Like something, if it was an avalanche and the avalanche is done, well, chances are there's not going to be more avalanches coming.
Right.
Work your way back to the tent, especially if you could see it with the posts sticking up. So there had to be something else that really said we should not go back there, whether it was government agents who said you will not go back to your tent, or it was, a Yeti that attacked them, grabbed them, and dragged 3 of them out to the ravine, and the rest of them were like, yeah, we're not going back there. Yeah.
Or somebody mutated into something larger and was trying to eat everybody.
Because of the radiation, it turned somebody into
because of the radiation.
Yeah.
Manzilla.
Yeah.
Well, hey, rest in peace, all those, those 9 hikers. This might go unsolved forever. But it is interesting to look up. It's interesting to research and look at all the different theories. We might have got a few things wrong, a few things backwards.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure our sources. Yes, we did, Nash. We'll make sure that our sources are in our show notes. So if you want to look at the stuff we were reading and watching, go check it out. It's definitely interesting. Now, Dave, a little special treat here for you, because I know, like me, you love metal. But looking up this topic, I came across a band called Tales of the Tomb. So their music is inspired by real life stories of murder, conspiracy, supernatural horror, and terror. They just happen to have a song called Dyatlov Pass Incident.
Nice.
And they were super cool enough to let us play the song on the show. So I'm going to play just a little bit here for everybody. Dave, you like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's Tales of the Tomb. Now, in their lyrics, they took the approach that the hikers were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Government, they stumbled into a military experiment that they should not have, and then the bad things happened to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tales of the Tomb, thank you so much for letting us play that song. I dig it. It's heavy. If you guys into that kind of music like Dave and myself, just go to Tales of the Tomb Paranormal.bandcamp.com. Check out their music.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and love your music. All right. Oh, and also, if you can't get enough of the Dyatlov Pass, there's a game called Kholat, Kholat. And here's a little description. The most terrifying journey of your life, set in the beautiful winter scenery of the Ural Mountains. Uncover the horrific mystery behind the Dyatlov Pass incident. Narrated by the famous Sean Bean.
What?
Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's on, it's on steampowered.com. Yeah, I was like, okay, somebody made a kind of horror-esque video game out of this.
Nice.
And there you go. Episode 1, episode 106. I think we definitely talked about, we went in a little bit more in depth this time around. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. Any final thoughts before I jump to the listener feedback?
No, the only thing I want to say is, Russia opened the case again in 2019, I believe.
Okay.
And they were hoping to put to rest a lot of these theories that people have out there. They ruled out any crime or foul play. And they believed it was either an avalanche, a falling slab of hard packed snow, or a hurricane. I'm not sure about the hurricane part, but
That's probably the katabatic wind.
Okay.
Because it's hurricane force wind.
true. So they actually closed it in June of this year, 2020. I'm sorry, it's not 2020 anymore. It's 2021.
Don't you ever bring up that year again.
So their findings were that they died from hypothermia, disorientation, and an avalanche. So, yeah.
But, the interesting
And
thing
aliens.
with that, both the original investigation and this reopening, they keep firing the lead investigator and replacing him, and firing that guy and replacing him. So there's definitely it's like they're either fishing for getting the answer they want, or I don't know.
Interesting.
All right.
Yeah. The only other question I have that I like the idea of the government, cover up type of thing, but their deaths with the blunt force trauma being as catastrophic as it is, if it was either a spy or a military thing where they were actually interacting with soldiers or something, what kind of weapon did they have to do that? That's a scary weapon.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hang my hat on the tribal mysticism and sacred nature of the mountain.
Okay.
And potential transformation, because I think mixed with that with the radiation, that's the only thing that's the only way that I can see all those deaths coming from the blunt force trauma, responsible for everything. Then the guy kind of chills out. He's like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. And that's the dude with the 18 pairs of clothes as he's heading down the mountain. And then he dies too, apparently. But that's kind of what I'm going through. A little bit of nuttiness and possession due to tribal mysticism.
Oh boy.
Doo-doo. There's tons of theories.
Yeah.
Tons. We only
We just
covered,
barely touched. Yeah.
as always, hopefully we piqued your interest.
Yeah.
Go check it out. All right. Jumping into listener feedback, we'll kick things off with Anthony. He said, hey guys, just listen to the first 30 of the Music World episode. To answer a few questions and enlighten a bit, Nash. Having worked in a meatpacking plant before, I can tell you a waste pit smells horrible. However, the kill floor doesn't, and neither do the drains. There is a near constant flow of water that goes over that area, and even looking back at the history of it, an odd hobby I have, I guess, even as it's most covered... Sorry, Anthony, I botched that. Even at its most archaic, meatpacking workers knew the blood was the worst, so the floor was likely covered constantly in sawdust, if not washed every few minutes. And in the 1850s, not much was left to waste. You would likely only have eyes, head skin, tail, anus, spleen, pancreas, and esophagus that was left over. Not a whole lot of entrails as intestines were used for the poor, and more people ate organ meat at the time. Cocaine would not have knocked the woman out, but would have potentially been used as a local anesthetic. So there's that nightmare fuel for you. Still listening, so you may hear from me again.
All right.
And that whole thing's in reference to the last episode, Bobby Mackey's Music World, where Nash thought that drainage, the well where they dumped,
smell
terrible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anthony. And I didn't hear back from him, so maybe everything else was good.
Yep.
All right. So we heard from Mary J. Hey, guys. Thanks for the ad to the group. I love the show, and you guys keep me company during my stressful work days. Well, thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
I'm glad we can be there for you. We heard from Scott T. Hey, brothers and sister. I have great news. I'm getting promoted to second sergeant in my reenactment company. Congratulations, dude.
Congratulations.
And Rachel, my wife, has become a huge fan of the show. We just wanted to give a huge shout out to the Punchers. You guys are effing awesome.
Yay.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. You're awesome.
Yeah.
You and your wife are awesome. Thanks for listening, man. We heard from Jeffrey. Hey, guys. There's a lot of hey guys going on here. I've been a fan for a long time. I took a break for a little bit. I listened to episode 1 to 95 in order 3 times in the last year.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh. I'm so sorry.
About 13 days ago, I tested positive for COVID, and I decided to catch up on the show. And let me just say, I missed you guys a lot. And I caught completely up and even listened to episode 1 through 18 while I was in isolation. Now I'm back to work, and I'm listening to you guys while working. Keep up the awesome show. Hashtag Pudding Skin Power.
For the win.
Jeffrey, I'm hopefully, it sounds like you're doing better from the COVID. That's great to hear, man. Thank you so much. And I feel like you have the record for most listens.
I think you win.
We'll get to the part why you took a break from listening to the show, but whatever.
That comes later. That's a whole other episode.
No, when we're gonna fly out there and
Yeah.
we heard from Stuboswell69. Just found the podcast and I'm loving it. Listen to it at bedtime. Nearly caught up. Hilarious. I'm from the UK and there's loads of great stories over here. But I think you need to do a show on the city where I was born, York. Here's a little taster. There's a historic building called the Mansion House, and in the 1950s, a plumber was fixing something in the basement. He suddenly heard a trumpet, and a legion of Roman soldiers marched through the wall, marched through the basement, and disappeared through the opposite wall. They were only visible from the waist up. He ran out of the basement scared as anything, telling everyone how he had seen these Roman soldiers with green tunics. People were skeptic, even though a Roman road ran under the building, and specialists certainly didn't. As they said, everyone knows Roman soldiers wear red tunics, not green. Anyway, some years later, archaeologists were on a dig elsewhere in the city and discovered Roman skeletons with green tunics.
Ooh.
Wow. That's freaky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I definitely would. I'd be gone.
Well, if they were just passing through, I mean, I would get freaked out. But at the same time, they're not paying attention to them. They're just kind of like, on their way to wherever they're going.
Yeah.
Unless they need something and conscript you to help them.
That's true. I don't know what I would do in that situation. Probably just get the heck out of there.
We heard from Chris on Podchaser. Left a review, 5 stars and a review. It's great, fun, and educational.
Oh.
Us? Is he listening to this podcast?
Yeah. Hopefully he left the review on the right show.
Right.
We're educational.
I feel like we're a gateway to education.
Yes.
You know, we pique your interest, and then you can go actually get educated.
So we're the gateway
I
drug?
will take that.
Right. We are the gateway drug.
And would see big shout out to on Twitter to Mike Ybarro. Somebody was looking for recommendations, and he said, "At Pea Punchers is one of my favorites. I love hearing them talk about different cryptids, hauntings, etc." Mike, thank you for recommending us, man.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, you want to send us some feedback? You want to send us a topic idea? You want to educate us on something we got wrong on the show? Just go to paranormalpunchers.com. You find all the ways to contact us. Thank you very much. All right. 4 years ago.
Yep.
And still going strong.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, do we just, what was episode 2? Do we take that and redo it now that we're better?
Oh, boy.
Brown Mountain Lights, right?
I think it
was the Brown Mountain Lights. Yeah, we I think that episode was like 20-some minutes, so we glossed over that, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's where we got the aliens in bikini line.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. I can't remember. Was that the one I started to do some stuff on, or no?
No, because by episode 4, Dave couldn't make it. That's when we knew that we need you need to be full-time on the show. And if we ever meet a super cool dude that can make beer at a bar somewhere, we should hire him to come on the show, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, there was when I re-listened to episode 1, I realized that there was actually 2 more people in the episode on this one than on episode 1, because Alicia, you threw that intro and then said there was no Alicia till the very end.
Yeah, she was like, there was this show on YouTube called AMC Movie Talk, and I dug it. It was fun to watch. Guy on there, John Schnepp, super cool dude. Rest in peace, John. He passed away, but I met him at a Comic-Con. Got a really killer book that he made, signed it for me, drew a picture. But I loved AMC Movie Talk, and they had this person was kind of like their host, and maybe eventually sometimes would fact check.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's what Liz should do this for Paranormal Punchers. That way she can introduce us and maybe fact check here or there. I was wrong. She should have just been the main host, and Dave and I should have taken a back seat.
Yeah.
But she was like, "Welcome to Paranormal Punchers, the show that takes blah, blah, blah. Now here's your hosts, Mark and Dave."
Yep.
And I'm like, thank you for that. Yeah, it was, we just didn't know quite what we wanted to be back then. But hey, still going strong. And maybe we'll recycle a few more episodes we botched back in the day.
We'll see.
All right. That's it from me. Nash, anything else?
That's it. All I know is stay off was it Devil Mountain or Death Mountain, or if
Death Mountain.
Yeah.
anything has a name like that, just don't go there.
Well, and especially if other people have proved the name.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Liz, do you want to impart and now you know wisdom on everybody?
I don't really have anything other than doing this hiking in January in the snow in the mountains when it's like super cold and just kind of awful outside. I have no interest in that, so. So you won't catch me there. So
he won't catch you outside?
No.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the show. Hope you have a wonderful day. And remember, if it's not weird,
it's not worth checking out.
Boom.
Dave, any final thoughts?
Oh, did I not ask Dave first? I did. I asked Dave.
No, you didn't. But it's okay.
Oh, well, no, I didn't hit stop yet.
No, it's all good.
No. Oh, Dave, what about you? Any final thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say that it's too bad that this happened 20 years before D&D was invented, and a reel could have saved them.
D&D for efforts that only 2% of the listeners get. That's why I didn't let them talk. No, I'm kidding. Well, and funny, for our Patreon, we're kind of working up a D&D campaign based around Dyatlov Pass. So it could be fun. So I'm glad, Dave, I'm sorry I skipped you, bro.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Well, if we do a D&D campaign based on the pass, we're all going to die. It's
How's that different than any other campaign?
You have a point. You do have a point.
Speaking of that, I think it's time to go play D&D where maybe Nash's character, Eric, might not survive. It's been touch and go with you lately.
Yep.
I almost ended your character.
You got an anvil in the chest.
And you got the horn of blowing, didn't you?
I don't have it currently. Somebody else took it from my nearly dead body.
Well, anyway, now is everybody good? And final thoughts? Everybody's good?
Yeah.
We can close out the show. And one last time to our wonderful listeners. Thank you. This is what you have to put up with, and I'm sorry. Because if it's not weird,
it's not worth checking out.
You're probably not listening to us.